Welcome back, ex-babies of the internet. We're picking up after our last video on Uncanny X-Men issues 94 through 97, and we're going over issues 98 through 100 today. If you haven't seen the previous X-Men videos, here's a quick recap. The X-Men got back from the Krakoa mission, and some people left, then some people stayed. The X-Men then fought an Italian mobster, a demon, Satan, and a guy with a penchant for red S&M gear. And somewhere throughout all of that, an X-Man died. If you're a fan of X-Men comics, or maybe just comics in general, hit the subscribe button, because there's more Marvel and upcoming DC content coming to the channel. Without further ado, let's enter that danger room.
Professor.
We start off issue 98 with our mutant friends enjoying Christmas and hanging out in, oh, of course, Rockefeller Center. I guess if you need a Christmas backdrop that's in New York City, you just jam people in front of the big damn tree.
Just going to talk in a very positive manner, giving off good vibes. We're just here to use the bathroom.
While that's going on, Nightcrawler is hitting on a young woman named Amanda, who will show up later in X-Men comics. It's also to illustrate that Nightcrawler is smooth as hell. At some point, Jean and Scott leave their mutant friends to go get dinner. They end up running into the creators of many Marvel comics, Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, who do a little fourth wall breaking here and watch their own characters make out. I legitimately don't know how to feel about that, so I'll just move on. Right as they're sitting down for dinner, wouldn't you know it? Oh yeah! Surprise genocide robot. Unfortunately, one of the Sentinels managed to knock out Jean and kidnap her. Outside, we see the rest of our mutant friends look above because there's some genocide robots descending on the building where Jean and Scott were having dinner. Storm and Banshee proceed to fly into the sky with Wolverine holding onto Banshee. While Storm is in full goddess mode, we also learn that the Sentinels who took Jean also kidnapped Wolverine and Banshee, taking them to the same place.
What you say? That you what you say? What you say?
Storm, seeing her friends get kidnapped, followed by Scott nearly being shot at by a Sentinel, releases something fierce in Storm, something similar to what we saw in the previous video. She creates what I would call an Omega-level hurricane. Scott eventually realizes that if these Sentinels are after the X-Men and Professor X is on vacation, then Professor X is screwed. So naturally we catch up to Professor X, who's on vacation. Turns out he's just chilling in a boat near the Bahamas. Even though he may be a morally bankrupt teacher and leader at times, I guess even he deserves a vacation. Probably would have been nice if he told Thunderbird's family about what happened to him. It's not like Thunderbird has a little brother who will eventually grow up to loathe and dislike Professor X. Isn't that right, Warpath? While Professor hangs out in this boat in the middle of the Bahamas, he's joined by Peter Corbo, who's kinda just known for showing up in Hulk comics every now and then at the time. At some point in their trip, Professor X and Peter Corbo get ambushed by, and say it with me now, giant genocide robots. Xavier now has to fight a giant purple robot, which as a telepath you'd think he'd have some problems, but I guess not since he has this thing called a mind blast? And he shoots the Sentinel with one of those, only for it to blast through underneath the boat and take Xavier off to the same place the Sentinels have been hauling off the rest of the mutants. Which is the exact place we end up going to, because it turns out the mastermind behind all the mutant kidnappings was, oh my god you guys, it was the Aryan poster boy, Stephen Lang. We see our mutant friends being held up by metal shackles attached to a bunch of machines on their heads and their bodies. You'll find out a little bit later why they're like that, and it'll be turbo dumb. Eventually, in typical villain fashion, he proceeds to assault Jean, which puts Wolverine in Berserker mode. NANI? Which allows him to break out of his shackles, tear off the arm of a Sentinel, and let all the other mutants get away. They find their costumes, and before they can proceed to escape, Wolverine makes an alteration to Jean's outfit, which is just tearing the bottom half of her dress, which is basically the first move that Wolverine makes towards Jean in the Jean, Scott, and Wolverine love triangle.
You guys are still here.
The mutants make their way further through the facility they're being held in. That is until Banshee finally manages to make it outside. But before we can find out what's waiting for them outside, we have to cut back to the rest of the X-Men who are desperately still trying to figure out where their captured friends are. We found out 4 days have passed since the kidnapping of the mutants and Professor Xavier. Peter Corbo shows up and says as much. Peter Corbo also figures out where the Sentinels were taking everybody because it turns out the facility is in space. Issue 99. Before mutant friends have a chance to suffer from space hypoxia, they get saved by the same genocidal robots that were trying to kill them earlier. We cut back to Earth where we see this absolute pandemonium, and this pushes the non-captured mutants to come up with a plan to get to space. Now you're probably asking, how are they going to get to space? 2 words: shuttle hijacking. Psst. Hey, if this becomes a Fast and Furious plotline later on, you know where they got it from.
Watch your back!
Hey man, he was in my face.
I'm in your face.
Storm, Colossus, Nightcrawler, and Cyclops break into the launch of the Starcore shuttle. The mutants and Peter Corbo launch into space, and almost immediately due to faulty equipment, they are heading into a solar fire wave, which prompts Colossus to puke on cue. So this part is really weird and mostly unnecessary, but we cut to Dublin to see a man mail a letter to Sean Cassidy, but gets ambushed by an unknown assailant after said letter is sent and dies. And then we cut right back into space. Seriously, this transition was so hard it gave me whiplash. Our mutant friends are nearing the space base, where the other mutants are being held against their will, when Stephen Lang is able to pick them up on radar. A Sentinel manages to shoot the hull of the ship, prompting things to get sucked into space. One of those things being Storm. Scrambling for a plan to fix the hull, Cyclops decides to just ram the shuttle into the base. We see Storm, who is still stuck in space, and now has to fight 2 genocidal robots. Now if you're wondering how Storm is going to fight out Sentinels in space, when her power relies solely on weather, well guess what? Space weather. As it turns out, Storm's power are not just relegated to Earth weather, but really any weather. This is by far the dumbest and coolest display of mutant powers in X-Men comics so far. So moving forward, I'm gonna call this a... We cut back to the rest of the mutant crew fighting Sentinels indoors. They obviously win, with one cool moment where Nightcrawler launches Colossus into the air and proceeds to become a mutant pinball. After the fight, Colossus becomes worried over what to do about Storm as she hasn't been seen since, you know, being sucked into space. Cyclops cold-heartedly swats down any attempts to possibly go back and rescue her. Before Colossus can open a can of whoop-ass on Cyclops, turns out Storm was just fine. When she shows up, he's overjoyed and picks up Storm like a little toddler. Unfortunately, that wholesome moment is cut by Scott being telepathically contacted by Jean. Jean lets Scott know that they're being held against their will by Stephen Lang and is planning to kill the mutants that are in hostage. Like any protagonist in a bad horror movie, Scott decides to break up the group and have everybody else free Wolverine and Banshee, while he and he alone, in this literal Nazi base in space with genocidal robots, decides to deal with Lang himself. We cut to Lang, who's mad about his dumb robots that can't handle the X-Men, but mentions it's fine because all that brain cloning is going to pay off pretty soon. Before he can monologue any further, Scott just beams the door open
FBI, open up!
and punches Lang in the face. Before he can keep beating Lang to death, Jean tells Scott to look behind him until he's taken out by... Well, that part isn't shown yet. Finally, the rest of the mutants make it to the room where Scott was taken to find out that the original X-Men team is here with Professor X. Man, it's about to get Smash Brothers up in here.
Ready? Go!
Issue 100. Issue 100 opens up with the page of the giant-sized team facing off against the original X-Men team. But Xavier, a man who was confined to a wheelchair, can stand now. And pre-blue fuzzball Beast is also here. This is just enough info to let readers know that something isn't right here. The next page just has an all-out mutant brawl going on. Some of the highlights being Nightcrawler calling out some of the same plot holes I mentioned, Professor X just one-punching Wolverine out, and the most important thing, the creation of the fastball special. How do I describe how dumb cool this X-Men special is? It is a feat of mutant engineering where a big metal man throws a small Canadian murder man at some sort of threat, and the threat hopefully goes away or just dies. This move has been done with various different people, where it's somebody else usually throwing Wolverine at another threat that's far away and very fast. But this is the original Coke formula. This is Prometheus stealing fire from the gods. This is just straight f***ing awesome. Anyways, at some point Wolverine gets back up from being Donkey Konged on by Professor X. And before he can go full murder mode, he gets stopped by Jean, who tries to telepathically control him, but fails. When the rest of the mutants watch what Wolverine does, it's the most gruesome, gory, in X-Men comics so far. Which is what I would have said if Jean Grey wasn't a robot with her robot guts on the floor. So yeah, Lang's master plan here was just to copy the abilities of the captured X-Men and graft them onto smaller robots, but because it's Lang who made it, it turns out they suck. And shortly after realizing they suck, Cyclops, from within the glass jar prison he's being held in, is able to free himself and the rest of the mutants being held hostage. Realizes everything is crumbling around him and tries to escape his space base, but not before trying to shoot down all of the X-Men on his way out with his tiny UFO? But he can't even do that right because he misses, ends up shooting his robot clones, and loses control of his ship. In a desperate plea, he begs the X-Men to help him from crashing, but before they can, ends up crashing and dies in an explosion. So after the space Nazi dies, the rest of the team has to figure out how to get back to Earth. For one, the shuttle they flew in with was beaten up pretty bad because of a Sentinel fight, they're nearly out of fuel, and there's also solar flares going on outside. So basically, they need to patch a hole in their shuttle, pilot the shuttle back to Earth's orbit, and then control the flares from outside from getting inside the ship. And after realizing what needs to be done, Jean steps up in a profound moment. Jean understands she'll need to both guide the shuttle with her telekinetic power and maintain the ship through the control systems, while also probably being exposed to a lot of solar radiation. However, Jean didn't exactly attend NASA's program for amateur pilots.
Houston, we have a problem.
But Peter Corbo did, and since Jean is a powerful telepath, she's able to absorb his experience and knowledge, kinda like Neo in the Matrix.
Jiu-Jitsu. I'm going to learn Jiu-Jitsu.
A few moments later.
Holy shit.
Hey, Mikey, I think he likes it.
Now, after understanding what Jean is planning to do, Scott is justifiably mad and pretty irrational. While I can't say Cyclops and I always see eye to eye, wait, was that a pun? I can understand that he's more than likely to see Jean sacrifice her life while trying to get the rest of the team back to Earth. So he yells and pleads with her to find another solution, but there just isn't time. With that in mind, she telepathically knocks her lover out and tells Banshee to go with the others to the life cell? Before Jean begins her harrowing task, she has to take shit from the short stack of pancakes that Wolverine is, who I guess is mad because she's sacrificing her life but doing it through the medium of sarcasm. So before Jean can take any more, without using any of her powers, she straight up claps back to the small murder man from Canada and tells him to sit his ass in the life jail cell. The last person she talks to before actually starting her task is Storm. While Storm and Jean haven't known each other for that long, Storm understands she has to make the sacrifice and can't do much without consoling her sister in arms. Her final wish is asking Storm to give Scott her love. We see all of this while Storm is holding back tears and heads to the life jail cell. Jean begins by sealing the hull of the ship with her TK powers and reverses the ship out of the Nazi space base. In the next few minutes, solar flares approach the shuttle and envelop it entirely. Scott finally wakes up and understands what's going on now. He is inconsolable, and it takes both Nightcrawler and Colossus to hold him down from getting to Jean. Nightcrawler does this while also crying because he understands Scott's pain, and the literal pain Jean is in from taking solar radiation head front. In the last few panels, we see Jean trying her absolute hardest to keep the ship intact while also controlling the ship back to orbit. With the last panel, we see of her just yelling out the word, Scott.
Professor.
Now you're probably wondering what's going to happen to the X-Men as they make their way to Earth. And to that I say,
You're sweating. Relax. Take a deep breath.
What's going on with you? What are you talking about?
because the next video is going to cover a different type of superpowered humanoid that also evolved differently from humans. And also because there's a multi-million-dollar movie about them coming out pretty soon. In the meantime, get subscribed to get notified of all the upcoming videos. As always, I hope you survived this video.